Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyidil Anbiya wal Mursaleen wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een wa man walahum bi ihsanin ila yawmiddin. أما بعد رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي ربي يسر ولا تعسر وتمم بالخير وبك نستعين يا فتاح سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا اللهم ذكرنا منه ما نسينا وعلمنا منه ما جهلنا بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Just continuing on from yesterday, where we were talking about deductible liabilities, and we discussed what are things that we can deduct from our zakatable asset gross, and based on that we can define what is how much zakat we need to give, and so on and so forth. So some common problems, they arise when we involve certain dealings and transactions that we have. And these transactions, they're very common. Many people have them, right? We're not going to get into whether these transactions are halal or haram. That's a separate story. But let's assume that someone has done a transaction like this, and now they have to decide whether they have to give zakat or not. So one of the first things that comes to mind is the RRSP fund, right? The retirement savings plan. That. So the thing with the RRSP is you can easily understand it as it's a savings plan, basically, right? And it's a retirement savings and investings plan for employees self-employed in Canada. And that RRSP is pre-tax. So meaning the money sits in that plan and it is not taxed, basically. And because the money is sitting there and it's not being taxed, it accumulates. Now it grows. Now how they grow it and things like that, that is something that that's for another time. We're not going to get into the specifics of RRSP. But let's say person A, B, and C, they all have RRSP and they're subscribing to their RRSP or so on and so forth, and they have this. So how are they going to calculate the zakat for their RRSP? Because there was zakat on RRSP. RRSP is for persons that are employed and they're older. So you're generally baligh by the time you have an RRSP. I don't know of anyone that is not baligh that has an RRSP. So it's a retirement savings plan. And what you do is, it's considered like an asset. It's considered like you've put some money aside and added to the gross asset. So what you will do is you'll take the amount of the RRSP that you have, right? And you'll deduct the payable taxes. So they generally do these calculations for you. Your accountant can do this for you. Anyone can do this for you. Is that you deduct the payable taxes on that accumulated RRSP, and the remainder is then added and considered a zakatable amount. So let's say in the RRSP, somebody has 40,000, 50,000, let's say $50,000, right, sitting in their RRSP. Now, the taxes they have to pay on that RRSP once withdrawn. So when you withdraw an RRSP, you're going to have to pay taxes on them. Until you don't withdraw them, they're pre-taxed. They don't have to be taxed. They don't get taxed. So when you withdraw the RRSP, you have to give taxes. So assume that you withdrew your RRSP, how much taxes would you have to give? So an accountant can do this, or the government calculators can do this. They have calculators online to figure out how much, if I withdraw my RRSP right now, how much tax am I going to give? Is it benefiting me to, even give the RRSP, so on and so forth, like that. So what you do is you assume that you have withdrawn the RRSP and you've given the taxes, and the remainder that's left, you add it to the zakatable amount that you had, that you had separate. That meaning, let's say you had in your home and cash and jewelry and all that was worth about 10,000, and when your RSP after taxes, the calculation came to let's say it's 40,000. So it would be 10,000 plus 40,000 together. Then you give zakat on all of it, right? You don't give zakat on just 10,000. You give zakat on 10,000 plus 40,000. All right. So you'll be giving zakat on the 50,000 as compared to just giving zakat from one place to another place, like that, right? Now, how do you know the value of the RRSP? So you take the value on the day of the zakat. When you're giving zakat, you take the value there, right? So you won't take the value, you won't take the value of the RRSP 5 days before or 5 days later or 5 months before or 5 months after, right? Or what it could be. No, it's what it is right now. So let's say your zakat date is Ramadan 1st, then what the value of the RRSP was on the 1st of zakat, first of Ramadan. If you're paying zakat on the 1st of Ramadan, if you're paying zakat on 15th of Ramadan, calculate on the 15th based on the 15th of what your retirement savings plan is, right? Once again, I'm saying this straight out. We're not going to go into whether RRSP is halal or haram or anything like that. This is if you have an RRSP for whatever reason, right? And you have to pay zakat on RRSP. You have to understand that. So if the RRSP plus your asset. So let's say, Zaid has $200 and $400 RRSP. But after calculating taxes for the RRSP and this here and his thing, so alone without the RRSP, Zaid doesn't have to give zakat because he doesn't have nisab, right? But with including the RRSP, he will end up having to give zakat. Right? So like that. So you can't just say that, okay, I have an RRSP, but that's not zakat. No, RRSP is zakatable after deducting payable taxes, right? So, and that will be added to the gross asset one owns. So all the zakatable amount you calculated, like we discussed before, right? Then you have RESP, right? In Canada, we have RESP. RESP is an education's saving plan, right? And the RESP can be just described as basically there's a subscriber, a promoter, beneficiaries, so on and so forth. And this is how it's set up, right? Just easiest to understand is Zaid and Amina wanted to save money for their child, Amar, right? And the way they did it was they invested in a RESP. It's an education saving plan, right? So education savings plan, registered education saving plan. So the same thing that happened to RRSP, it was pre-tax, there was no taxing, things like that. It's made for that. Now an RESP is the property of either the child or the parents that did it for that child. So it could be, for example, Zaid and Amina did it for Bakr. So RESP could be for Bakr, or RESP could also be withdrawn by the parents. So there's two ways to go about it. Until the child becomes baligh, this is how you should look at it. Until the child becomes baligh, the parents should proactively and istihbaban pay for the the zakat of the RESP, if they have an RESP. Once again, not going into whether RESP is halal or haram, not even touching that, right? So if they have an RESP, the parents should proactively pay zakat for it. That is better than not paying zakat at all. And once the child has become baligh, then assume that the child is the owner of the RESP, whether he has withdrawn it, whether the parents have withdrawn it for the child or not, right? Assume that the child is the owner. And if the RESP is so much, after deducting taxes and everything, if the RESP is so much that the child needs to give zakat on it, or RESP plus the child's savings or whatever he has, a little bit of cash here, is enough to give zakat on, meaning it's nisab, then the child will have to give. So two things to remember: RESP is a registered education savings plan. It's generally for children, right? And if the child becomes baligh and the savings equal or are greater than nisab, equal to or are greater than nisab, then zakat is fard. Obviously, the savings, by that we mean that their assets outside the RESP plus the RESP, right? If RESP alone is enough for nisab, then alone, right? If not, then both together, they also have to be given zakat, right? Like that. Now, some people pay insurance premiums, right? The rule with insurance premiums is, so we're just going through common things that occur, common transactions and things like that we have on a daily basis. People have issues. We're just going through that. Insurance premiums, zakat is not payable on insurance premium. So, you know, whatever type of insurance premium you have, how much ever you have, there is no zakat payable on that, right? Moving on from that, there is, like, if you've ever bought a house from any Islamic financing institute, they usually do ijara, diminishing musharaka schemes, things like that, right? They usually do that. Or what they'll have is another third scheme. Basically, is the third scheme doesn't come here. So you'll either have like an ijara scheme. Ijara is basically, you know, rent to own type things, where, once again, I'm going to be straightforward here. Not all ijara schemes are halal, right? There's a lot of Islamic finance options out there. A lot of them don't even have ulama, qualified Islamic scholars, to actually look whether the contracts they're making, whether the schemes that they have in place are even compliant to Sharia, right? They're just saying, yeah, we're Islamic finance, we Islamically finance, you know, we Islamically finance housing, we Islamically finance businesses, so on and so forth. The reality of the matter is they have nobody actually counter checking whether you are actually Islamic or not, right? So you need to make sure that you have some sort of qualified alim. The thing with finance is not everybody understands the delicacies of finance. Not every alim is his specialty is finance. So you should have an alim whose specialty is finance, check into the scheme that you're getting into, right? And, you know, after they have checked into that, they should, you know, they should tell you whether it's right or wrong. Now, with that being said, you'll have ijara, diminishing musharaka schemes. Ijara scheme is like a rent to own type thing. Diminishing musharaka is also like a rent to own type thing. There's just a little bit of difference in the contracts and so on and so forth, right? Now, the thing that happens here is that each time you are signing a contract, it's a new contract. It's a new thing. You're basically buying a portion of the house from the other party. So two parties own a house, right? Just take the diminishing musharaka scheme for a second, right? You made a down payment of $50,000 and the Islamic Finance Institute made a down payment of $50,000. The property was worth $100,000. Obviously properties are not worth $100,000, but they're more. But let's say you did $50,000, they did $50,000. You own half and half of the house. But what did they say to you? We promise that we will sell we will portion out the house, our portion, our 50% will portion out into 50 portions. And every month we will sell to you one portion based on the market price of one portion of that month, right? And they say that to you. So you're like, okay, you know what? I will slowly pay those portions off to them and buy one portion at a time from them. So what ends up happening is slowly their portion decreases and your portion increases. So that's called a diminishing musharaka. Your portion is increasing and their portion is decreasing, right? And slowly one time comes where it's the last portion and you basically give them some money and they give you the last portion for that thing, right? Now, in that case scenario, right, you're not giving them, this is not debt, right? This is not a debt that you have to give them. You're actually buying something every month from them, right? So it's not a debt. It's not something you've bought and you owe them money. No, it's you're continuously buying something new from them. So ijara and diminishing musharaka schemes, the payments that you make for them, they are not considered a debt. So, you cannot deduct future payments that, oh, next month I'm going to have to give $1,500, $2,000 to the diminishing musharaka scheme that I signed up for as a debt. No, You cannot. So for example, you're calculating on Ramadan the 1st, right? And from Ramadan 1st to next Ramadan 1st, you have to give about you have to give $2,000 every month, right? So about what, 2,400, 24,000, right? Let's say 24,000, 2 times 12, 24,000. So you have $24,000 that you have to give by next year. So what do you say? That I have to give by next, I'm going to give this anyways in the thing, so I'll deduct that as a debt from my zakatable assets? Absolutely not, because this is not a debt. Every single month is a new transaction, and because every single month is a new transaction, it's not something that you have bought and you owe money. It's rather that you're giving money at the time and they're immediately transferring the property to you, or that portion of the property to you. So it's not considered a debt. So ijara payments, diminishing musharaka scheme payments, they're not considered debt, and they cannot be deducted from the zakatable assets. Now, there's a lot of other things about deposits. So we make deposits, safekeeping deposits, guardianship deposits. You have deposits in the bank. All of this, I discussed this before as well, right? All forms of deposits and guardianships are zakatable. I've given somebody some money to keep in their safe. I've given some money to the bank to keep, right, that I can withdraw. All of these are considered as zakatable assets. Why? Because they are yours. You have not you have not transferred ownership to other people. We'll talk about what it means to transfer ownership in Shariat in about 1-2 slides, right? But what it is that you have not transferred the ownership to them, but you've just given them as amanat, as safekeeping. So these type of deposits and safekeeping and guardianships of wealth, right, is considered zakatable. So you will have to, whether it's in your hand or not, it's still yours. So you'll have to give zakat on them, calculating on whatever it is. So if you gave 5,000 to a person to keep, safekeep, right, and then I'll take it 10 months from you, but you just keep it with you right now. I don't have anywhere in my house to keep it safe. Okay, so he keeps it in his safe and he puts it away. So in that case scenario, that wealth that is safeguarded by this person is still your wealth. It's not his, right? So you'll have to give zakat on that $5,000 that you've given away, basically, right? Sometimes you make a down payment for something. Example, Zayd made a down payment for a house, right? He made a down payment, but he hasn't gotten the house yet, right? And his zakat day came up. Or even better, down payment for a car. Let's say you made a down payment for a car, a brand new car is coming out, and you're like, no, I want to be the first one to get this car. So what did you do? You said to the guy, okay, I'll make you a down payment so that the first car that rolls out of the factory is mine. So he says, all right, no problem. Right? So what do? You give the down payment. Now the down payment is given, and this guy said, I'm going to give it back. I'm going to give you the car 10 months down the road because it's still in construction, or there's some problems with it, or whatever, or 5 months down the road. So you're like, okay, all right, no problem. Right? Now the down payment has been transferred. Right? It's out of your wealth and it's been given to the company or the other person on the other end. So it's no longer your ownership. So the down payment that was given, even though you did not receive the goods in return, you did not receive what you needed back, right? The down payment is considered as not yours, it's theirs. Therefore, there will be no zakat on the down payment. So the down payment is not subject to zakat. Down payment given is not subject to zakat. Received a down payment is, if I receive down payment for somebody, is obviously subject because it's mine now. So received down payment is subject to zakat, and given down payment is not subject to zakat, right? Like that, you can understand it like that. And then we have benefits. So you have different types of benefits, so there was this entire issue in Toronto. I remember talking to some ulama in Toronto back when, that child benefit, it was a very long time ago, child benefits that come in. Who is the owner of the child benefits? Is it the child or is it the parent? So let's say, the parent has $200 in their bank account and that's the only thing they have. And now zakat time comes in, but all of a sudden they get a check saying there's a $500 child benefit. I'm just rough parking a number. I don't know what the child benefit amount exactly is for everyone. It's just calculated based on your taxes anyways, right? So they get a benefit, right? Now this benefit is given to the parents to utilize for the children. It is not given to the children, right? So it's given to the benefit. The benefit is given to the parents to utilize for the children. So they have a moral obligation to utilize it, a moral obligation to utilize it for their children, right? So if they choose not to utilize it, morally they are corrupt. They are morally corrupt because the government is giving you for the utilize it for the benefit of your children, not for the benefit of yourself, right? So according to the secular law, meaning the law of the government, is it finable or not? That you can discuss with a lawyer. But as far as Sharia looks at it, is like in good faith, you should be using it for your children rather than for your, trip to Hawaii, I guess you could say, something like that. So child benefits, child tax credit, working tax credit, all of these things that come in, social security allowances, right? Oh, sorry, that's a misspelling. It should be not security allowances, social security allowances, right? Social security allowances that you get, right? They are all, once you have possession of them, once you possess them, they are all zakatable, and they need to be added to your gross assets, to all the assets that are zakatable, and then you have to give zakat on them. So these are the RRSP, RESP, insurance premiums, ijara, diminishing musharaka schemes, deposits, down payments, benefits. These are common things that occur, that can be for anyone, could be involved in any one of them, and you can understand from this, right, that what is zakatable, what is not, what is calculated as debt, what is not debt, so on and so forth. But these were common things, and I thought, we'll just address them straightforward and end it there. Uh, Now, one other thing, we generally own shares, right? We own shares in businesses, or we own shares like in the stock market or something like that. You're involved, so you own shares to a business. Now, shares is a bit of a doozy. You can be part of shares for two reasons, right? One is you're in it, so you basically have your shares and you bought your shares to hold it as an investment and generate dividends, right? To generate money on it, basically, right? So you want to generate some money on the shares that you have in front of you. So you hold it and you're not going to sell it, and you have no intention of selling it, right? So you're just there, okay, this is a profitable business, I'm going to invest in it, and you invested in it. So you own 10% of the business. So you own 10 shares, 20 shares, whatever. Let's say the business is 100 shares and you own 10 shares. So you own some portion of the business. Now you're holding on to this. Why? Because the business continuously profits, and the profits of the business are given as dividends to their shareholders. So you continuously get 10% of the profit. So you said, I'm going to invest $10,000 and make profit on those $10,000 by owning 10% of this business and just leave it there. So you're holding and generating dividends. That's one scenario. Second scenario is that you buy shares to resell. You're just going to buy this and you're like, okay, as soon as this share goes up 2 points, 3 points, 4 points, or whatever, right, I'm quickly going to get rid of it. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to get rid of it. I'm going to resell it, right? I'm going to resell it. So you're in the business of selling shares, right? You have to understand it two different ways. One is you're in the business of investments, and the other is you're in the business of selling shares. The business of investment means that you are involved in the business itself. The business of the business of selling shares means you're involved in just selling shares, not actually the business itself, right? So I bought 5 shares here today, tomorrow I get rid of them there, and snap of a finger here and snap of a finger there, I'm just reselling, buying, selling, buying, selling, buying, selling, buying shares, just to make money go up and down depending on how what I want to invest. But I invested in gold, and I invested in the gold share, and I'm just sitting there for 15 years, and I have no intention of reselling because I just want to accumulate that that portion that I own. So I want to take it and I want to make it better. So in the second scenario, where you're just there to resell, you will look at the entire holding of the share. So the share is worth, let's say, $5,000, or you bought shares worth $5,000, whatever amount of shares it was, like 5 shares, 6 shares, whatever. right? You bought shares that were worth $5,000. Now, that whole $5,000, whatever is the amount there. So now let's say you bought it, you wanted to sell it, but you're waiting for it to just increase. So you're just waiting for it to increase for next 2 days, 1 month or so. So you got dividends. Let's say you were waiting to sell it, you're waiting, just waiting. And by the time you're waiting to sell it, they've sent you a dividend every 3 months or something, or whatever the case may be. It depends on the company, depends on the system you're following, all of that. Generally, it's at the end of the year-end dividends and stuff like that. But if the company decides to send you in 3 months, let's say you got your first dividend, even though you did not want to, actually, you're not going there for investment, you're going there, you bought the share and then you want to get rid of it, right? So what you do is you take how much the share is worth. If the share is worth, let's say 2,000, 3,000, 6,000, 8,000, whatever the amount is worth, plus the dividends that you got from the share that you're owed, right? Let's say you own the share for 3 months and you were owed this much dividends, right? So that much. So that I'm owed this much dividend plus the amount the share is worth, all of that together is zakatable. That you must give zakat on, right? That is all completely zakatable. Then, so that's not too hard to understand, because it's just add the share, add the dividends together, add the value of the share on the day of, add the dividends that you're owed together, and that's the amount of that's the amount of money that is zakatable. You add that to your gross assets of, I have gold, I have cash, this, that, or you add it all to that, then you calculate the zakat based on that, 2.5% of that, right? Now, in the other side, you're holding and you're generating dividends. You bought this thing just to generate dividends, because it's a very profitable company. No point in selling the share. So what do? You buy share into the company and you just let it make money for you, right? Through the dividends, right? You invested in a startup company and the startup company hit off, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, this share, awesome, right? Why? Because I bought it for $1,000 and I'm making $4,000 on it every 3 months, right? Or something like that, because the company just made profit or whatever the case is. So you're like, why sell it? Make the money. The dividends are better than the share is worth, right? Things like that. Obviously, when the dividends are good, the share prices also tend to go up, right? So your investment, the dividends are better than the investment you put in. So what do you say? Just leave it. It's good. Right? This will make this is good for making money. So it's an investment, you're holding it down. So in that case, zakat is levied on two things, right? So you're giving zakat on two things. Now you need to have like a report given for that business in order to understand this. So the first thing is the dividends that you get. Obviously, once you've gotten the dividends, automatically you're giving zakat on that, right? And you're giving the zakat on those dividends. And number two is that business must have certain things that are zakatable, right? If it's a business that is a buy and sell business, you invested in a lighting company or something, and they have lighting and this and that. So they must have zakatable assets. They must have stock. So you should know how much stock the business has on that day, and that much amount from that, you calculate your percentage of own. So you own 5% of the business, 2% of the business. Then you take all that zakatable assets of the business, and you say 2% of that is what I own. Therefore, I have to give zakat on that, right? So that you need to get in touch with the business and whatever you're involved in, and you need to tell them, I need to know what assets do you guys have on hand and how much stock you have, this and that. They have their annual reports and so on and so forth, and it's not that hard to get. Right now, these are just the common things that occur, common things that happen, that people buy shares, people sell shares, people have RRSPs, RESPs, all these are all the common things that involved whether it's zakatable or not. Now let's start paying our zakat. Now we've calculated, so far all that we've talked about is we've calculated how much zakat I need to give, because we know what is zakatable, what is not zakatable, and all that is zakatable, the value of that, 2.5% of it is zakat. So now I've separated. So let's say, all right, Zaid calculated all of his zakatable assets. Zaid first separated his non-zakatable assets and zakatable assets. So Zaid owned a business and Zaid owned some personal property as well, like his own things. Now, from his personal property, there were things that are zakatable and there were things that were not zakatable. And from his business, there was zakatable, non-zakatable. So zakatable, all zakatable assets from personal and business, Zayd took the value of all those things and he came with the figure that I have $100,000 in assets. Let's say, I'm giving a random number, honestly, but I have $100,000. So this $100,000 I have to calculate zakat on, because my total zakatable assets are 100,000. So he goes and he puts it in his calculator and he goes and puts zakatable assets. So he puts 100,000 times 0.025 equals 2,500. So he has to give $2,500 in zakat if he has $100,000 in assets, basically, right? So it's 2.5%, or 100,000 divided by 40. You could do either one, right? So even the same thing will come. 100,000 divided by 40 equals 2,500. So now he has to give 2,500. So what is the first thing he does? He, before separating $2,500 by his hand and counting out $2,500 in notes, in cash, and saying this is that, he first has to make an intention. Zayd has to make an intention. Now, when intention comes to zakat, intention in zakat is fard. Without intention in zakat, zakat will not be complete. Right? Zakat cannot be completed. He gives $2,500 and he gives it to a poor person, and then he just says, "Here you go." And this poor person is like, "Jazakallah," he leaves. But Zayd forgot to make intention. Zakat is not done. Right? He needs to give another $2,500 to somebody else, to some other poor person, with the intention that this was for zakat. Right? So one of the first intentions one should make in zakat is, I am giving my zakat to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, following the orders of the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as shown by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is the basic intention, right? I'm giving my zakat to an eligible person for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as dictated by Allah, as shown by Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? This is the intention. That intention is full. It's wholesome. It incorporates all these things. Right? So intention is fard in zakat. Right? And when should the intention be made? It has to be made. It must be made when giving the zakat to a qualifying eligible recipient. So a qualifying eligible recipient, when you're giving it to them, you have to make intention. Right? You can't just not give it. Like the example I gave. In the same manner, let's say you're not giving it to the exact person that is a recipient, but you're giving it. Zayd gave it to Amr to give to Bakr. Right? Zayd, Amr, Bakr are three guys, and Zayd gave it to Amr to give to Bakr. So when Zayd was giving it to Amr, he had to make the intention that I'm giving zakat to Amr to deploy the amount of money of zakat to the people that are rightful of zakat. Right? And then Amr says that Bakr is rightful because he's needy, he doesn't have nisab, and he's like this. So okay, so Amr then spends on Bakr and says, here's your zakat amount. That's perfectly fine. But if Zayd forgets to do that, and Amr then spends on Bakr, Zayd's zakat is not done. That is not possible. Right? Zayd forgot to make the intention when giving it to Bakr that this is zakat money, and he's telling him, look, this is zakat money. Right? So the intention is very important. In the same manner, let's say you cannot get the money to the person right now. But what do? You calculated the zakat and you separated it. And you said that this is my zakat money and this is the money this is the other money. This is my assets and this is the amount of zakat I need to give. So I separated it and you put it in an envelope. Right? So you have to make intention at that time that this money is for zakat. If you do not make that intention at the time when you're separating the money, then zakat is incomplete. Right? Another common issue that happens is that, brother, I'm giving Sheikh, I'm giving zakat to so and so, but I don't want them to feel that I'm giving them zakat. But I know their condition, and I don't want that. No problem. Intentions are things of the heart. You don't have to tell the person I'm giving you zakat money. Right? All you have to do is you just have to get. So Revealing your intention is not necessary. Revealing your intention is not necessary. So basically what you could do is, you could give a gift, but make the intention of zakat, and giving that zakat would be valid. So it would look like you're giving a gift, but you're actually giving zakat because your intention was that this is zakat money, I want to give that as zakat money, right? So another common issue that pops up, that's a very easy to understand masla. There's not too much dispute on that. I don't think there's any dispute on that, as a matter of fact. Zakat on another's behalf. So how do you give zakat on somebody else's behalf? Generally, this occurs when the husband gives zakat on the wife's behalf, or the wife gives on the husband, or father gives on the child's behalf, even though the child has enough money. Right? Sometimes children live with their parents, so the father will actually take out that much money from his own wealth and give it, saying that, okay, your money, just keep it with you, but I'll just pay your zakat for you right now, so you don't have to get the money out, or something like that, anything like that. So can you do that? Yes, but there's some conditions, and the conditions are not too hard. What you need is, it is permissible to do it from one own's wealth. Meaning maybe they can give you the money and then you give it. That's already fine, no problem. But let's say you tell them that, no, don't use your money. What I'll do is I'll pay your zakat from my money. So the person says, okay, no problem, right? Okay, do that. Pay my zakat from your money. So then he tells you that my zakat amount is 2,500. So just give 2,500. Oh, okay. All right. No problem. So that's fine. As long as there's approval from the involved party, meaning the person that has to give zakat, as long as there's approval from the person who is giving zakat, there's absolutely no issue. So I generally recommend that when you're calculating the zakat for women in the household, because generally in the household the women own the jewelry. Men do not walk around with gold jewelry. Right? So the women own the jewelry. So because women own the jewelry, they need to pay the zakat. Now men generally calculate it and pay the zakat. Now the wife, it doesn't even know that she was paying zakat for so many years. How does she not know? She needs to know that the zakat for this jewelry was being paid. Unless if the husband has said that all this jewelry is mine, but you can use it. If the husband is saying that, then the husband can do whatever he wants with the zakat of that jewelry. But if the husband has gifted this stuff, or the wife has bought this jewelry for herself, and this jewelry is gold or silver and it comes to the zakat nisab, or the wife has some money and it's coming to the zakat nisab, the husband is only holding on. The husband has to make sure to tell the wife that I am giving the zakat on your behalf. If he does not, and the wife does not know that her zakat was given, right? And the wife says that I didn't give any approval. I don't remember ever saying that, you give the zakat on my behalf. Even though the money was given, the zakat will be invalid, because the person who was supposed to actually give zakat did not even give approval for you to give zakat on their behalf. So you can only be the na'ib. You can only be the appointed person, the representative of a person, when that person has actually approved of your appointment. Right, of your for you to be their representative. Now you've made the intention, you've done everything. Now you need to transfer that amount that you owe in zakat to the actual person. For that you will need something known as tamlik. This is known as tamlik. Transfer of ownership is known as tamlik. To transfer the ownership of one item to another item. So what is the definition? To transferring ownership of an asset from one person, in our case the person who's giving zakat, right, to another person, the person who is receiving zakat, the zakat recipient, right? So now you're looking at it and you're saying that, okay, so the zakat giver has to give it to the other person and there's transfer of ownership. Okay, so tamlik is compulsory for zakat to be considered paid, right? It will, if let's say tamlik, the conditions of tamlik are coming ahead. If any of the conditions of tamlik are not fulfilled, right, then the tamlik is naqis. It is not complete. And because the tamlik is not complete, the zakat is not considered paid. Now, what are the conditions of tamlik? Right? The giver must be the zakat payer or their agent. The person who's giving it has to be somebody that actually is giving the zakat. It can't be some random person. Okay, so for example, Zaid and Amr are sitting together. Zaid says to Amr, Yar, I have to get $2,500 in zakat. I have to pay it. So Amr is just walking by and he finds some poor person and he says, hey, are you eligible for zakat? And the poor person says, yeah, I'm eligible for zakat. I have nothing else. So Amr says, all right, you know what? I'm going to give zakat on behalf of Zaid. But Zaid never appointed Amr as his agent to give zakat. So the fact that, even though ownership was transferred and that guy got 2,500, right, dollars, that poor person got 2,500, the tamlik of zakat is not complete, because the zakat money is still with Zaid and Zaid still has to give it, because Zaid didn't appoint Amr as his agent, right? So or the person who's giving it is not the zakat payer or their agent, right? So if the zakat payer is giving it, check mark to the first thing, that condition of tamlik, of transferring ownership, is perfect, right? The recipient must be a natural living person entitled / qualified to receive zakat. It has to be a natural living being. It can't be, I give zakat to an organization. No. An organization can be used to distribute zakat. And once they have distributed your zakat, only then has your zakat been fulfilled, right? And then organization cannot give it to another organization who gives it to another organization. This actually happened in Toronto with one organization. They gave it to one organization, that gave it to one organization, and it was just going round and round, right? And no one was receiving the zakat money, right? And every time they would transfer it to somebody else, lo and behold, there's some money missing or something. Ajib. Subhanallah, don't know what type of thing was going on there, some fishy business, right? This happened in one institute, I know. So legal entities do not count. So in corporations and things like that, organizations, they're not natural living persons that you can transfer ownership to. The Sharia does not consider them as owners, right? And then likewise, the transfer cannot be in lieu of, remuneration for, gratuity for, or consideration for services rendered. A big way of saying, just a lot of words, right, for saying that that person should not have done something for you because of which you're giving them money, right? Or you're not gifting money, right? You're not gifting, you're giving as zakat. It may look like you're gifting, like the intention behind it may look like you're gifting, but it has to be zakat. So for example, there was a raffle and some guy won $20. So that $20 cannot be zakat money, right? Because the guy entered the raffle and he paid money to enter the raffle, and now he's getting money back. With gambling and stuff like that, that's a whole different fatwa. But what I'm just trying to say is, it can't happen like that, right? It's not remuneration for it, or in lieu of something else, or somebody did some job for you at home and you're like, all right, I'm going to give this guy zakat money for that. No. So let's say a person, he did work for you at home, he fixed your toilet or something, and this person, he renovated the room, yeah, and this person is eligible for zakat, so you can give them zakat money and simultaneously pay them for the amount they're due, right? But what you can't do is say that I'm going to give you the amount you're due as zakat money. No, that's not possible. That cannot happen, right? And lastly, the last condition of tamlik is, the recipient must acquire complete possession with ownership without any conditions. So the recipient must be a complete possessor. It must be in his it must be with him, and there must be no in any conditions. You cannot give zakat and say that pay me back in 10 years. No, there's condition. Or you cannot say that, oh, I'm giving you I'm giving you zakat, but after 10 days. So until you have it given to him, your zakat is not done. It's not, promises are not equal to giving zakat, right? Your zakat is not done. So they must have possession. Until they have possession of that asset, they're not considered as they have gotten zakat. And if they have not received zakat, therefore you have not paid zakat, like that. So this is how tamlik and giving zakat works. So you can apply all these rules in how you give zakat to whoever you give zakat, in whatever condition you give zakat in. Right? Next is those people that are zakat recipients. Who can receive zakat? Very quickly, we'll go through this. It's not that difficult. Poor and needy, they don't have nisab, basically. Basically, what you're saying is they don't have nisab, right? They're fuqara, masakin, people who are poor and who possess more than their basic needs but do not possess wealth equal to nisab are known as fuqara. Masakin are people who are destitute and extremely needy to the extent that they do not have enough for their daily food rations. They will also get, right? In the same manner, debtors, those people whose liabilities exceed their surplus and zakatable assets. They have so much liabilities that they fall below the line of nisab, right? They fall below the line of nisab. In that case, you can give them money to pay off their debts, or you can pay off their debt on their behalf by telling them that this is the zakat money that I'm paying to pay off your debt. You understand? You tell them first. And the easiest way is you give them the money and you tell them that here's the money that is there, and you pay the debt now. Go pay the debt, right? Like that, rather than actually just paying the debt for them, right? The best scenario is you give them the money and they pay the debt, rather than you pay the debt and then they don't even know that you paid the debt or something. No, they need to acknowledge that yes, you have given me money of zakat, and and this is used to pay the debt that I owe here. That's fine. They need to acknowledge and approve of you paying the debt from your zakat, or you can tell them, oh, I'm going to giftly pay your thing, if you don't want them to feel bad that you're using your zakat money to pay them, right? Like that. But that's okay. The intention of zakat you can do, but they need to acknowledge that you are paying on their behalf, and they need to acknowledge that yes, you are giving me this money through which you're paying the debt. Like that. So debtors, travelers, this generally doesn't happen in our time, but let's say, assume you're stranded in the middle of somewhere, nowhere, and people need to get rid of their zakat, so they give it to a traveler who's in such a condition that they cannot access their personal money, right? They have no money and they can't access their personal money. If they have money sitting with them and that money is more than enough for them, they cannot accept. But if they have no money, or money that's not enough at all in order to make it back home, right? So you can give them zakat. They're eligible for zakat because of their temporary condition. Fi sabilillah. Now, this is something that is, we have to understand this. There's a lot of institutes out there that take zakat in the name of fi sabilillah. Completely wrong, right? They have no clue what what they're taking, right? So fi sabilillah are those people that have to carry out a fard, obligatory act, and subsequently, due to loss of wealth, are unable to complete that fard. Now, that's the general thing. But what does this apply to? All types of common charitable causes are not included in this category. A widespread misunderstanding about the term fi sabilillah has misled many to believe that this includes all types of charitable deeds. The Quran and Hadith do not support this. If all charitable causes were included in this category, there would have been no need for mentioning 8 different categories of masarif in the Quran. There are 8 different categories. Over here, I'm only going to mention 6 because these are the ones that pertain to us. We don't really find anyone else. So fi sabilillah is, there's one institute right now. I'll be honest. They collect zakat on the name of fi sabilillah. The usage of fi sabilillah in general, in collecting money, is different from usage of zakat. Zakat can only be given to very specific people, as compared to the regular fi sabilillah or lillah that we give in the masjids. They can be used for anything. Zakat can't be given to you cannot give a zakat to a non-Muslim, but lillah you can give to a non-Muslim, right? So over here, fi sabilillah is generally taken to mean mujahideen fi sabilillah, those that are participating in ghazawat. Nowadays you can't even find that, right? So that is what you need to understand, right? So institutions taking zakat on the name of fi sabilillah, they need to recheck their and assess their values, because their charitable deeds do not come under fi sabilillah. Their charitable deeds come under sadaqah and so on and so forth. They do not come under fi sabilillah. In the same manner, mu'allafatul qulub, there are institutes that are taking money so that they'll be like, oh, we'll spend on, they're taking zakat money to spend on non-Muslims, saying that these non-Muslims will accept Islam. That's not how it's done. The Islamic government needs to do this. If, let's say, an Islamically established government takes zakat money to spend on certain non-Muslims that they believe will come closer to Islam, or not only if they come closer, but it will end some strife between them, or strife between Muslims and the non-Muslims of that area, or they'll accept Islam, right? Then the Islamic government has the right to do this. An individual or a small organization does not have the right to do that, right? And the lastly is, let's say, you live in an Islamic country and there are zakat collectors dictated by the government. So government appointed officials that collect the zakat, that come to collect the zakat, you can give them the zakat, because you know that the government is going to use it in the right place. Now, in the next slide, we're just at the last slide, we're going to talk about who cannot be recipients of zakat. Somebody has the hands up, just type the question on the chat, inshallah, and I'll answer that. Oh, this is very simple. What is lillah? Lillah just means giving for the sake of Allah. So money spent for the sake of Allah. So money given in zakat and money given for the sake of Allah, they're two different things. Money given for zakat can't be used everywhere. You can only use it in very specific places, right? And money given in lillah, it can be used mostly anywhere. There's not much limitation to where it can be used. So that's why it's very important to understand that the lillah boxes in our masjids, they're not zakat boxes. Don't put zakat money in lillah boxes. Zakat is zakat, lillah is lillah. It's separate. Sadaqah is also separate. Sadaqatul fitr is separate, zakat is separate. Things like that. Now, so zakat cannot be given. You have zakat cannot be given as to these three categories, and this is just a massive list basically, and this list makes you understand who we're generally. So when it comes to one's family, you can't give zakat to your spouse. So husband cannot give to wife, wife cannot give to husband. In the same manner, you cannot give to your real parents. Let's say, Zaid is adopted, then he can give to his parents if they are things, because they're not his real parents, right? So you cannot give to your real parents, real grandparents, and real great grandparents. So if you have like step grandparents, let's say your grandfather married for a second time, so that is your step grandmother. You can give zakat to your step grandmother, right? But you cannot give zakat to your true and real grandfather, like that. Just examples. So up. So real grandparents, real great grandparents, real great great grandparents, so on and so forth, going up like that. So up. You cannot give up. There's a word for it in one cannot give to immediate antecedents. Antecedents means upwards, and descendants means downwards. So antecedent is the word for you're giving up, and descendants you cannot give to your actual descendants, your immediate descendants, meaning real children, not adopted children. Real grandchildren, not adopted grandchildren or something like that, or real grandchildren. So I'll give you one example, and so on and so forth, like that, right? You cannot give zakat to that person. In the same manner, institutions cannot get zakat. Hospitals, madrasas, construction projects for masjids, hospitals, or madrasas, right? General welfare projects, these general ones, not the ones that are, government based for the benefits of the Muslims because the Muslims of that area are poor or something like that. They're very specific scenarios. I'm talking about general welfare. So like Islamic Relief decides that we're going to take zakat and we're going to we're going to dig a well in some corner at the in the world, right? Good job, excellent, dig a well, but you cannot use the zakat money to dig that well. That's the difference. Because zakat money needs to have tamlik, and tamlik can only happen when you're giving it to a living being. Remember that, right? Construction projects for masajid. People give, look, one is people, construction projects for masajid, same thing. You're giving to the masjid. Who's owning the money? Nobody is, right? Nobody's owning the money. It's the masjid gets it, and then they construct the masjid, and the money is gone. Whoop, it's gone. So madrasas, same thing. Construction projects for madrasas. Now, madrasas sometimes have students that are poor, that cannot afford madrasa living, or that cannot afford boarding, and so on and so forth. So what you do is you give to the madrasa that, you guys have some poor students that are studying here, and we want to help those students out. So you give to the madrasa on the condition that they will give to the students, not that they will keep themselves. So what the madrasa does is, generally they give to the students, and then they give to the students, and they tell the students, now you have money, so you pay the minimum fee to the madrasa. It is, if the madrasa has a fee. If the madrasa does not have a fee, then you give, you utilize for yourself. So the madrasa, what it does is, because this person is poor, they give him, they don't give the lump sum amount of money to that child. What they'll do is, they'll give monthly allowance, and that monthly allowance will come from zakat, right? So that the child can utilize, every month the child gets about $100 or something, and the child utilizes, I bought some chips, this, that, so on and so forth, rather than taking 2,000 something dollars and giving it to the child. And you're and you're and that child, now $2,000 in 1 month is gone. You're like, what? Because they're children, you want to take it a bit slow, and even though they're children that are baligh, right? Even though they're children, that a lot of madrasas, they house orphans, right? They house orphans, and because they house orphans, the orphans don't really have anybody taking care of them. So these orphans, they're poor, and they can do it. So these orphans, they don't know how to manage. Nobody's teaching them how to manage money, and they're young. So they'll slowly, inshallah, staying in madrasa, slowly they'll understand how to manage money, how to do maths, and this and that. Madrasas take care of all these things. So what the madrasa does is, they'll give them stipends every month. They'll give them a little bit here, a little bit there, and things like that, right? So madrasas. Hospitals have the same policy. If a poor person comes in, so what they do is, they need to do ilaj. Some hospitals, not all hospitals, but you got to make sure that they're doing this. Hospitals, so what they'll do is, like, poor person comes, they ask them, are you zakat eligible? Do you have this much money, or this and that? So the person says, no, I am zakat eligible. So, okay, you need money for the treatment. So the hospital will give them money for the treatment, and they will spend the money on their treatment. That's how the hospital will do it. So like that, it'll be fine. But just to give blatantly to hospitals that, oh, bada acha kaam kar rahe hain, hum unko dete hain, they're doing a very good job, so we'll give them. That is not allowed. That is not allowed, right? General people, employees, and remuneration. We talked about that before. A non-Muslim, you cannot absolutely give zakat to a non-Muslim. Prisoners, you cannot give zakat to prisoners. A Islamically classified rich person, which is like, he has wealth equaling to or is greater than nisab. So a person, anyone that has wealth that is equal to or greater than nisab cannot take a penny from zakat, basically, right? And Sayyid, now not Sayyid by name, Sayyid by ancestry. Sayyid is a descendant of Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu, Harith radiallahu ta'ala anhu, Jafar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and Aqil radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Descendants of these four, plus the descendants from Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anha's side. These five things. So Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anhu's children, like that, or descendants from Abbas, Harith, Jafar, and Aqil. All five of them you cannot give zakat to. They cannot, even if they don't have nisab amount, you cannot give. You should give abundant amount of sadaqah to them, but what they cannot do is, they cannot accept zakat. So if you want, give them sadaqah, lots of it, right? But you cannot give them zakat. Now, just a few things before we end off. I'm going to take another 2-3 minutes. Sometimes what happens is, you cannot define whether the person is needy or not. So it's always best to, figure out whether the person is needy, he actually qualifies for zakat or not, right? If the person does qualify for zakat, right, then give them zakat. Let's say you assumed that they qualified for zakat, but later on it turned out that they actually did not qualify for zakat. then in that case the zakat will not be valid. The zakat will not be valid, and you will have to give it again. It's a very basic thing, and you can read the writing there. Zakat will not be fulfilled by purchasing books for an institution or land purchased for public utility and made waqf. The example I gave was like a well. Some random institute opens up a well in some place and they use zakat money to open the well. Not allowed. Institutions and you're giving, okay, madrasa needed books, so you use the zakat money to buy books for the madrasa. Nope. Purchasing books, buying things for an institution, buying chairs, desks, these things. No, you want to do that, mashallah, give sadaqah, but zakat cannot be used there, right? And last one other thing is a dead person's debt. So somebody that has passed away, they have debt. Now they owe. You can give sadaqah, and by giving lillah or sadaqah, you can pay off their debt. Sure, right? But what you cannot do is that you cannot pay that debt off by giving zakat money, right? Because they're passed away. There is no tamliq that takes place, right? Zakat tamliq is a condition. And for tamliq, the person has to be living. A dead person cannot take the money from you, right? And lastly, the last thing that I'll mention is zakat contributions cannot be given to such institutions or organizations that do not give the rightful recipients possession of zakat, but instead use zakat funds for construction, investment, or salaries. Zakat must be given in the ownership of the eligible individuals. So you have a lot of institutions right now. It's scary. It's not a good thing, right? That are giving zakat, that are using zakat as that are not giving zakat to the right people. Number one, right? Number two, they are not. The zakat is not in the. They're not giving as ownership, right? They're not giving in the ownership of those people. They're not giving zakat, right? Uh, so this will end off here, inshallah. Tomorrow, next Friday, actually, we'll end zakat there, right? We'll end zakat with a frequently asked questions, and we'll do 2 examples of zakat. We'll go and we'll actually calculate the zakat for someone, right? And we'll calculate the zakat for, let's call him Zaid. Bichara Zaid, he gets everything. All right. So he's the go-to example for the thing. You know how in English you have John, Bob, Billy, or whatever. So Tom, right? Or common names. So in Arabic, Zaid is the example for everything, right? So he goes for everything. So basically we'll calculate Zaid zakat. We'll calculate 2 people's zakat, Zaid and Amr. We'll calculate their zakat and give examples of how you calculate zakat, what things to keep in mind, right? And that'll be a practical example, inshallah. We'll end off here. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم.